I feel like people are in almost like a motivation burnout and a, like you said, toxicity and like heaviness burnout, and in a deficit of like joy and
Mhm.
simplicity and play and like authenticity and all these things we talked about. So that's kind of what Own Your Weird is to me. It's like, I don't know if it'll become a book or what it'll be, but it's like this concept of like, we gotta like have fun again because it's just gonna kill us if we don't.
Welcome to the Jacque Show. So Angie, or do you go by Angie or Angie Lee? How do you prefer to be?
Angie Lee's my last name. So,
Okay, perfect. Well, that makes sense. So we'll be less
but a
formal.
lot of people do that.
Yeah, well, you never know. So Angie, I'm really excited to have you on here today. A lot of, again, we were talking before we started even recording this, a lot of really awesome content being created. And one of the things that really, in my opinion, makes you stick out compared to others is your like authenticity to the weird. And so we're stepping into owning your weird. So thank you so much for being on this podcast today. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm very excited. This is my favorite thing to talk about, owning your weird. So when
Yeah.
you were like, hey, let's talk about owning your weird, I'm like, that's what I love to do. That's my favorite thing. So
Yeah, it's like I'm currently doing that right now. So let's just roll that into a podcast. So
yeah.
why don't you tell everybody, where are you from? I learned a little bit about you, but where are you from? Where are you at right now? Give me a little bit of details about you.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Midwest. I'm originally from Chicago, but then lived in San Diego for a few years. Now I'm in Austin. So I kind of did a full circle almost, almost back to the Midwest. So long story short, the cliff notes is I thought I was going to go be a broadcast journalist or a dietitian. So I was in dietetic school. My typical ADHD brain was bored in class. And I was like, hey, I'm obsessed with health and wellness, but I can't stand college. I wasn't made for school. Like I'm a typical entrepreneur who like has known since I was 5 years old that I wasn't going to follow the rules, wasn't going to follow the system, screw the system. I was like, get me out of here. So I'm 22 years old. I start this health blog. I'm a trainer on campus. I'm studying to be a dietitian and I'm like failing all my classes. And I was like, I wonder if you can make money from a blog or like on the internet. Like, is this a thing? And this is 2018, 19. So
Wow.
at the time it was kind of like, or sorry, 2008, 2009.
Okay.
I'm like, wait,
I was going to say, you're really, really young. So
oh my God, I'd be only like, wow, yeah, that's crazy. It's 2008, 2009. And it was kind of a thing then, but not really. Nobody was like a full-time influencer or content creator. So I would tell my friends and my parents, and they were like, nobody's going to pay people to like read blogs and stuff. Like, and I'm like, that's funny because now it's like the world, right? But
yeah.
I had this vision of what would it look like to create this brand online. And again, I'm using these words now, but internally I didn't really know what it was. I just knew I was naturally really passionate about nutrition and marketing. And so I just started to put myself out there with no intention to monetize. But what happened, because I think that energy was just so pure and so of service, that it started to build this awesome female community that I have in this audience now 11, 12 years later, that I've had the optionality now to do live events. I own a CBD line, a wellness line with my brother. So we're in the DTC space. I do speaking, content creation, influencer. I work with brands. I'm a podcaster. My ADD brain does it all.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I could never do just one thing. I think I'd go crazy. So, but I tell that story because it all started from creating content. It all started from me saying, you know what, I know this isn't the path. I don't want to go be a dietitian working 80 hours a week, paid $40,000 a year and hating my life. So is there another way? And at the time, everyone thought I was kind of crazy. They were like, Angie, just be safe. Go get a safe job, get a 401k. I was $100,000 in debt from dietetic school. So It's like, that's not a joke when you're 20 years old. Like, still not a joke, but like, I was kind of like, you know what? I'm young. I don't have kids. I might as well just be in debt now. Whatever. I'll just eat tuna, on little crackers.
Bean and rice or ramen noodles. Yeah.
And yeah, so 11 years later, I built a brand and community, and now I've kind of done a few different things, which is really awesome. But yes, I'm an entrepreneur and all of that, but I see myself as a community builder. I love creating content. I love sharing authenticity, as cheesy as that is. That's like, I almost hate using that word now, but it is what the word is. It's like inspiring people to say, screw the rules and just be who they are. Because I do think that not only does that affect you, obviously, in your career, but going into the health aspect, health's one of my biggest passions. I think what is the healthiest thing we're supposed to do as humans is be in that alignment. And when we're not, that's when like dis-ease happens in the body. So I'm also big on like, do what you were meant to do here, because if not, it's going to eat you alive. So
yeah. Yeah, and I took a couple notes as you were stepping into that, because we talk about, or what I talk about, is like the 9-to-5ers, which is like we're told, yes, go get a safe job, go get a 401k, make sure you have a will, all those like checks and balances for just your normal average life. And then when you tend to say like, well, that just doesn't, I feel like I'm like a square trying to fit into a circular hole. It just doesn't work. And you just keep shoving it and shoving it and shoving it. And you're like, I don't know. Feel like there's something else out there. But when you did step into that, did you ever have any doubts or fear about stepping into that space?
Of course. It's so hard to answer this question because half of me, of course, I'm a human and I'm like, I'm scared shitless. I'm like ready to pee my pants. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm 20 years old. I need to just go get a safe job. Of course. And again, like I said at the time, podcasting and being an influencer wasn't as big. The opportunities now to monetize your brand and your passion on the internet is vastly different than it was 11 years ago. There's so many more opportunities now. Now, if you tell someone down the street what you do, if I'm like, hey, I'm a podcaster or an influencer, they'd kind of know. But back then it was like still kind of weird. So I was terrified because I was choosing to try something that I didn't even know if it was going to work. But then the other part of me, I think you're either maybe just born with this or not. I have this part of me that I like different. I like novelty. I love dopamine. Maybe that's the ADD, but I love trying something and seeing if it's going to work. I'm not afraid to be embarrassed. I'm not afraid to fall on my face. And I think that's very evident with my content. I'm not afraid to embarrass myself. And I think that actually ended up being such a good thing growing up because it gives you the ability to try stuff because you're like,
Yes.
If I suck at it, cool. I suck at it. I'll try something else. So I don't really have as much as some people, that whole fear of trying new things. I'm like, let's go. I rather try it and see if it worked out than live with regret. So that was always kind of my driver when I was leaving college and I quit that day. I went into my counselor's office and I was like, hey, I'm going to quit. And she's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I think I'm going to like start a blog or something. She's like, and then what? I was like, I don't know, maybe people on the internet will pay me.
I can only imagine the look on her face.
Okay. Like, she was like, good luck. And I like took my books and like threw them in a garbage can and went down the elevator and called my mom. And I was like, this is the best day of my life. I'm done. So it was crazy. It was stupid, but it's like, maybe sometimes that's the way it needs to be, is that you have no idea, but you've had to figure it out.
Yeah. We were just talking about that at a men's trip, the guys trip that we took last weekend. And we were talking about, where do good ideas come from? Like, where do they come from? And they don't come from under fluorescent lights. They don't come from office buildings. And then we were talking about, so many of us are ingrained, whether it's we say like our father, mother, sister, preacher, teacher, they all tell us like, you have to be careful. You have to be safe. If you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, this is going to happen. And it's just all their past experiences and your grandparents and your great grandparents' experiences being passed down to you. And in a way, it's like a handicap. And so many of us, I feel, and you probably agree, are so afraid to fail.
Yep.
And you'd rather be uncomfortable. And like, to me, I'm with you. Like it's not a feeling that anybody should have to experience, but I love that you said that.
Yeah. I always say you got to be a little crazy to want to work for yourself and to try different. You just do. It's like the best kind of crazy. But I think that's one of the greatest gifts that my parents gave me. And I saw them, I saw my dad be an entrepreneur. And then what I want to give to my children is to not follow the rules. I think we're living in a time where like, there's no rules anymore with a lot of industries and a lot of things that are going on. And I think that's really cool that we're breaking these paradigms. And to be honest, nothing is secure. There's no job out there that's really that safe. So if tomorrow I quit this and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work at State Farm and, 90 hours a week, just plugging along because I'd be a great whatever they do at State Farm. And I'm over there.
You would be great on the commercials though. I'm just saying that would be hilarious. I would watch those.
I would show up like 2 hours late every day to work and be like, let's party. So I would just fall asleep. It'd be so boring. But even that, okay, let's say that I get a 401k, I get all these fancy schmancy things. I got dental insurance, whatever. At the end of the day, like they could fire me tomorrow. I just don't think any job is secure anymore. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a teacher, there is no one thing that's going to guarantee you financial security. And that's scary to say. But I think when you take that ownership and realize that, you can actually take your power back and realize that like we can control this experience. But that's very overwhelming to people who were taught like, I go to school, I get good grades, I get a safe job, and then I die, right? Like I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to make sure I do it all but I don't know, like we've seen in the last few years, like people are leaving jobs they thought they would stay in forever for many reasons. And it's just like, I think that's kind of what I always thought is like, hey, nothing's really safe. Safe is an illusion. I might as well just create what I want. And I knew that I had the personality that needed to be my own boss. just because I'm stubborn. So I was kind of like, I almost had no other option. It's funny. People interview me. They're like, why did you want to do? I'm like, I had no other option. Okay.
Yeah.
You think someone was going to hire me?
I would have been a very bad employee.
Yeah. I mean, there's just not many jobs if you're like that creative and you want something different every day and you want variety.
Yeah.
Like there's not many jobs where you can express that. So
Yeah.
it kind of happened by default.
There you go. I absolutely love that. Your brand, again, like in owning your weird from your mindset. What made you want to be like, hey, listen, like this is it. Like I'm going to step out, like, because there's a lot of, and you used authentic, but like that's my word of the year is like I need to find authentic people because they hide behind social media and they're not authentic. And I've met plenty of them, and I'm like, you are not who you are there. Yeah. And so for you to be authentic, I mean, you have to be authentic with the content that you make because you can't fake that stuff. So what gave you the confidence to really step into that?
Yeah. I think for a while when I started, I was looking at what other women in my industry were doing. And at the time it was health and wellness. And then it was the entrepreneurship space. And now it's a blend of both. But I remember thinking, if this girl is successful, I have to do it just like her. And that's actually the worst thing to do because now you're just mimicking someone else, and that's not true to who you are and your strengths. And the next thing you know, you just blend in. And I don't want to blend in. None of us really want to blend in. It's like we want to stand out, but then we follow the crowd and we compare ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So we all want to be different, but yeah, we all do what everybody else is doing. And so I saw that, and a lot of people, especially in the online marketing space, I'm sure you've seen this. They're very polished. I think it's kind of cold. I think it's kind of boring. I think it's just very like, oh, you have to be serious in order to teach marketing. And I kind of was like, I'm going to stick a pencil in my eyeball if I have to like be like this. Like, this is not who I am. I'm a comedian. Like, I can't lie and act like I'm like this where I wear a suit all day or something. So I made this decision one day that I was just going to start to sprinkle in like who I really was. And I kind of was at the point where I was like, I didn't sign up to be an actress. If I'm actually going to keep this job of a personal brand, I might as well just be fully me. I have nothing to lose. And I realized that it was so exhausting to be inauthentic. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about is the energy that you waste on pretending you're somebody you're not. And I use the analogy of when you go to a party with a bunch of people that you don't really like, but you're pretending to fit in, like it's like that crew you don't like. And you come home from that party and you're like, I'm exhausted because you had to have so many fake conversations. Like, how's the weather? Oh, it's great. Okay. How are the kids? Like, it's just like, oh, I'm going to,
the same Rolodex questions.
Yeah. It's just so cheesy and fake and it's not you. But then you're hanging out with a few of your best friends and you feel rejuvenated after. You feel like you could be yourself, wear what you want, say what you want. You don't have to be filtered. It's like this great experience where you don't feel like you drained your energy. And I love that example because it proves as humans that the most energy rich thing we can do is to just be who we are, because it costs so much to fake it. And so I realized that I was like, man, I'm filming all these videos and pretending I'm someone I'm not. And it's exhausting. Like, I don't have the energy to even do this anymore. So I just started to sprinkle in myself and poop jokes and just like my humor and things that maybe weren't like you shouldn't say or whatever. And
yeah,
it's interesting what happened. What I thought would happen is people would be like, oh, you suck. I hate this. But in reality, the other weirdos came out and they were like, oh, hey, I see you. Like, let's be weird together. And now one of my biggest things is, especially for women and men in the entrepreneur space, really realizing that you can have the and sign of, hey, you can be super weird, super funny, super quirky, whatever that looks like for you, because everyone's weird looks different, and also be successful. Like, there isn't this, you don't have to choose. And I think there sometimes is this idea that we have to choose between being funny and weird and having fun and being successful. And I don't want to choose. And so I think that's kind of where I come from now, is like, what would that look like to own whatever is weird for you? That doesn't mean you have to be extroverted or be funny or any of those things. Everybody's definition of weird is different. And so I believe it's just coming back home, almost like an onion that you're peeling the layers, like coming back home to who you are in a way where it feels like you're not trying to be like anybody else in whatever space you're doing. You know what I mean? It honestly, it saves you energy. That's like the biggest thing for me. It saves you energy. And now it is funny that I'm not trying to do it, but that is like the biggest feedback that I'll get, which is interesting, is like, oh, you're so authentic. And I'm like, wait, if we're noticing that, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a lot of inauthentic out there? Because if me just being me is standing out, that's white. Does that mean like everybody else isn't, And then of course I lived in LA. So I saw like the stuffy fake influencer scene, and I'd meet these girls in real life. And I'm like, oh my God, like, come on, this isn't you. You don't wear that. You don't do that. And then I've just seen so many different industries and niches that I've been in where it was just so fake. And so I kind of made a decision. I was like, what if I kind of was like the antithesis of that? Like, what if I was like, I'm not going to do what the cool girls do. And now it's built this community where I feel like I'm hopefully giving people permission to just be whatever that looks like for them.
Well, I feel like that's kind of like just right on point with like your brand, where it's like you see something and you're like, how can I do the complete opposite of that? And then you're like, let's do it. And you have fun with it, which is awesome. There's two things I pulled out here. First one is, you know, we were talking about how, you know, working the 9 to 5 and doing all those safe things make you feel safe. Yeah. But then when you're saying you're being authentic and you're hanging out with your friends and you're feeling energetic, I feel like you would feel more safe because people were buying you for you in an authentic form and not a fake form, you know?
Yeah, that's something I've really had to think about as, you know, I have a personal brand. It's like, what do I share? What do I not share? How real do I get? And the longer I've been in it, of course, it's always like, just share it, just post it. You start to care less, but in a really good way, because you realize that even if you get judgment or feedback or somebody who doesn't like you, whether that's at a party or it's on Instagram, you realize you're not going to die. And I don't know if maybe this is my 30s now. I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but you just start to care less about the opinions of people that you just don't care about. And unless it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think who I would want to comment and not hate me. I don't know. I'm trying to think of someone cool. I don't know. It's like, there's only so many people in this world that I'd actually be upset if they said that. So that's something I've really had to deal with, because that's part of this that we haven't chat about yet, is like, when you do this, you're going to get some pushback. You're going to get people who think they don't like it. And I think that a large part of it is because a lot of times this is where like triggering comes from, right? Is they see that part in you and they want to do that. And they're actually really sad and jealous that they can't be fully expressed. Because at the end of the day, we're all very attracted to people who are just fully expressed. It's like, why do I like watching some artist do something that I could never do, but it's like, he's so in his flow state and he's being so him. We're all very attracted to that congruency. And so when I do get trolls or whatever, I can notice it's like, there's a part of her that actually wishes she could be more her. Yeah. And it's not that she doesn't like my content. She actually loves it so much that she hates it. She likes it. Yeah. It's really weird. I've had to look at it a different way, you know?
What's through a different filter. And, you know, I'll get that as well. Like, I had one person get super mad at me. And for me, like, I'm used to getting bullied. I'm used to people saying stuff about me. I have very, very, very thick skin. So for me, as like growing into, like, I would probably say even my 30s, as I started my 30s, I start seeing it through a different lens. And it's like, what happened to that person today that they felt like they needed to jump on here and they needed to gain some sort of significance by putting somebody else down? Yep. Did they get yelled at by their spouse? Did they lose a dog? Like, what happened? Because you're not seeing, there's always a thought behind a thought. You're seeing the thought, but what is that cause that triggered that thought to take place? So just a different way to look at it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's you nailed it. You just have to kind of keep going and know that the only thing you're here to do is to be fully yourself. So you have another option anyway. It's like, you might as well do that. You set yourself free. And one of my biggest values is freedom. So it's like, for me, I have to be free. Like, I did a values little quiz the other day and we were going through it with my team. And it's interesting because my values were like play, freedom, authenticity. And so it's almost like it came down to my values of like, I don't want to feel like I'm trapped when I'm on the internet and I'm having to like share something that feels like it's not me. And so even now I won't post things just because it's trendy or you're supposed to. I'm just like, I got to be me. Yeah. So
that's awesome. And you brought up something that is probably the hardest thing for people, is that fear, the fear of failure, but then also the fear of judgment. Yep. And so I always bring it back to this. Now, it sounds like you said your dad was an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Were your parents really supportive of you when you chose this decision path?
Yeah, they were. And so I realized that that's not most people's stories. Maybe that's what really helped, is that I never felt like I didn't feel like I would fail anyone if I failed, quote unquote.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people do suffer with that. And again, it's projection of your parents or your grandparents' insecurities. They've never seen it done before. So people fear the unknown. They're not sure of it, you know? And then the other question past the family piece of it, friends, have you had to, you know, have you kept your friendships? Have your friends, did they come out and try to say, hey, Angie, be careful. I don't know what the hell you're doing. I don't even think podcasts were a thing back in 2008, as far as I know. I don't know. Were your friends supportive, or was there any naysayers that was trying to kind of throw you off your course before you got to where you are now?
Yeah. In the beginning, they were just confused, I think. And then some of my friends, I think back then, because you're, 20 to 25-year-old girl, a lot of women at that point are not mature enough yet to actually celebrate other women's success. Sometimes it's just a lot of us, it's hard. So it came off as jealousy of like, you're being stupid, but really they're jealous because they wish they wanted to do that. They didn't like their corporate job. So they're like, what are you doing over there? That's weird. Why are you sharing your life on the internet again? Why are you making that post again? So it came off a little bit as like jealousy mixed with confusion, but mostly guys I was dating, that was my hardest thing, was explaining to them, because a lot of them were like, this is kind of weird. Like, what are you doing? And I don't, do you show me on the internet? Do you not? And with my ex, it was like that too. So it's just, that was more of the struggle for me, is finding somebody who would be supportive of that and understand like, hey, I'm ambitious and I want to try these different things. And I want to try living a different lifestyle than what I was supposed to live and do. And so, I think it was always kind of a back and forth thing, but at the end of the day, not in a selfish way, but in a, if you do this, you're going to be a better person for everybody else around you way. I chose myself. I chose always coming back to like, what makes Angie feel alive and happy and what's true for me, because I can't fake it with my friends. I can't fake it in a relationship. Eventually he'd find out. Eventually they'd find out this is what I was doing. So I just kind of was always like, screw it. And I knew I'd find girls who understood. And now, all my girlfriends are very, very supportive. Some do similar work and then some don't at all. And they still love it. They're like, oh, this is great. This is cool. So I think you eventually weed out anybody who's like that. You attract who you are meant to attract. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm big with that. With the energy you're giving out, you're going to get back. And if you're anyone in the troll situation, if you just get hyper focused on that negativity, then you'll get more, or you'll get more naysayers that come out of the woodwork, or friends that you thought were friends will then turn on you and like, what the heck is going on? And it's all starting with your thoughts. If you don't control what's going on in here, you're going to continuously attract the negative. So being authentic is huge. And I was going to say it if you didn't, but like if you're just hiding behind a personality in a relationship, you can only do that for so long before the boyfriend be like, wait a second, you were this person last week, you're this person this week. Which one are you? And are you bipolar or schizophrenic? Like what's going on here?
Yeah. And I did that for so long in my 20s before I met Clay. I was just like, I'm going to fake it. Like I would pretend I was somebody different to all these guys. And now they're all like following me on Instagram. They're like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is a funny video. Cool. I'm like, yeah, bro, like this is what I do. And they were always like, oh, I didn't think you'd actually make this a job. And so, I always I wanted to almost not be that person. I didn't want to be my most self-expressed person. Because when you're like this, you think you're too much. Right. And so that's the fear, especially as a woman. It's like, I'm too much. What if someone thinks this is too much? And so now I'm like, that's so silly and stupid. But I think you almost have to go through that phase though. You have to go through that phase of choosing your purpose and versus like shitty friendships. And I think when you're so aligned and you're so clear that this is something that you're here to do, and I see it as like, I have to creatively express. It's why I think I was put here to bring people joy. And this is it. This is what it looks like right now in this season. I kind of die inside if I'm not doing it. It's in some capacity. Like I can't imagine not. And so I think it's almost like if you had to kill that part of you in order to have friends, that's really sad,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, let's turn down the dimmer switch of who I am just to make somebody else happy.
Yeah. That just doesn't seem like that's going to work. That's not sustainable. You could do it for a few weeks, a few months, but then eventually you're going to feel like you're dying inside, which doesn't make you a good friend. Cause now you're bringing this energy of like, you're hiding something or you're feeling like you're not fully yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say the biggest obstacle that you overcame was? Would you say it was the relationships, or was it something else that you experienced in business, if you will?
Yeah. Ooh, in business. Yeah. Okay. Business specifically. I'm like, of course, life has had, many ups and downs, many things outside of business. But what's interesting is two things come to mind. One, when it is your business and you're sharing your life and your personal life, your life is business and business is life. So it's not like you have a huge escape, right? So like I said, my job is very energy rich. So if I'm going through something like a family member that's sick, or something like my parents' crazy divorce when I was in college, if I'm going through anything heavy like that, it is hard to show up. So that's been hard, is like, oh, wow, that really impacts my life. And then I can't just go sit behind a computer and be in an Excel doc. I got to like show up for people and be that energy for them. So that's been hard to like separate those two and find that balance. So I'm working on that. And then, kind of like the troll stuff. I think a few years ago and still now, there's things that are just overly sensitive that don't need to be, and cancel culture and all this crap. And I had to go through some hard stuff with that, which was the hardest part of my job for sure, is experiencing that. So that was for sure the worst, because it is hard when people that don't know you at all on the internet just make assumptions or say stupid stuff. And then the next thing you know, you're like, it's crazy because you've never met these people, right? But that's really hard because I didn't expect that to happen. I was a little naive and thought like, oh, I'll just get by having a brand and everyone will love me, right? And that's not the reality. You're going to get people that just don't like you. And most of it's for stupid reasons. And if it's for a good reason, then cool, I'm not your person, whatever. But I just now, after 2 years, feel like I'm finally coming out of that place where I feel confident enough to be fully myself. But the last 2 years have been really hard where I've been afraid to fully be myself, which is ironic because it's what I teach. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the last 2 years have been really hard. And I actually, somebody shared a clip of John Christ. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
And he was in Oregon and he was doing some stand-up comedy up there. And the stuff he was like throwing out there, I'm like, dude, like, how are you doing that? And you're in Oregon. Like, how are you doing that? And it seems like the whole cancel culture happened, and the peak of it was probably like last year. And then it started kind of tapering off a little bit. And now I feel like comedians and like online personalities are now like, can we talk now? Like, are we going to get censored? Like, do I have to watch what I say? And no matter what you say, somebody's going to disagree with that. And to me, I mean, this is going to be on it. Like, I'll post this on Instagram, but somebody's probably going to get mad. I'll probably get shadow banned for it, but who gives a shit? I feel like Instagram will purposely throw these people at you. I'm trying to do good in the world right now. And you're trying to throw me off course. Like, that's ridiculous. But we all have this internal desire to be liked and to feel significant and to feel safe. So when people hurl these things, it's hard for our chemistry not to receive that. But the faster we can kind of metabolize that and release it, the better we can be both online as well as in life and with our health. That's my opinion.
And I think you get a little bit immune to it. And you hit it on the head. I love John because he's so good. We saw him actually live and he's so good. And I've been stepping more into the comedy space. I'm starting stand-up soon. So for me, I resonate with that
awesome.
deeply of like, it's very vulnerable. It's probably the most vulnerable job there is, but you kind of get to a point where I think you've almost realized that you've given yourself a pass. And they know that what they're saying, what makes something funny is truth plus pain. That's why comedy is funny. There is a layer of truth in it. And that's what makes it funny. So they almost know like, hey, I know this shit. I know what I'm talking about. And they find a way to finesse it where usually it's pretty like either side of whatever argument you're on could resonate and see it. But it's a scary space. But I think you just get used to it. Like you just don't care anymore. And so now stepping more into comedy, I'm like, oh shit. And I've had to have this conversation with a few of my friends. They're like, Angie, you're just asking for it even more now. I'm like, yes, but when you announce like, hey, I'm now owning this, you almost get a little bit more of a permission slip when you're a comedian because they know like you're on here to kind of like ruffle some feathers. And it weeds out people who don't have a sense of humor then, you know? Yeah. I don't want to be the page that every girl comes to and is like, oh, it's super safe and it's super vanilla and boring. I want to start being even more like my humor is not PC. And so I think I almost want to find like, where's that line of like, I could maybe say some and like the girls who get it will get it. And the ones who don't will still respect it. Like I'm bold enough to, I don't know. This is like the constant struggle that I'm in because I feel like there is still a part of me that's like, I want to let out even more of that, but I'm so nervous. So it's a constant dance. But I think regardless, you got to realize that I respect anybody who's just being them. There's a ton of people I don't agree with on the internet, but if I'm like, you know what, that's him or that's her and she's being all her, like good for her. Just keep scrolling or unfollow and move on. Like we cannot expect everyone to be us or to understand our humor or to see things the way we do. So I'm kind of giving myself that my own therapy with that as I'm stepping more into comedy because like you just said, it's, they say stuff that you're like, oh my God, how are you not afraid? But they don't care anymore.
But that's how comedy was. I mean, like some of my favorite movies from back, even TV shows like from back in the day. And I'm an old soul. So I like everything from back, like even before I was born in the 80s, 70s, 80s. I love 70s music. Like, the humor and like the Eddie Murphys and Mel Brooks and like some of these movies. Now you watch it now and you're like, oh, how did they get away with saying that? But like everyone knew that it was just a joke. It was just in good fun. Everyone was made fun of at some point. Like everyone had a target on their back in a safe way. Yeah. And I know you're in Austin, so I'm assuming you've heard of JP Sears. You've listened to like some. Yeah. So like he stepped into that space and he just went for it. And I'm like, holy cow! And I love him and I respect him for that because it's one thing to say you're passionate about something, but it's another thing to really step into it. And from what you're talking about, the inner turmoil that you have, like you inspire me just from what you said to be even more authentic, because I do toe the line, because I can talk about really personal things at a scientific level and make you so uncomfortable that you have one or two choices. You either change the way that you freaking think and go towards health, or you continue to die. And like, I'll water it down because I'm like, well, what if I upset too many people? And then I'm like, well, I can just do like a warm lead where I'm like, hey, I'm kind of like this. And once I have you, then I'll explain the science behind it. And then I'll convert you into a super healthy person.
Yep.
But I think, again, just into that authenticity, really stepping into that and telling people like, this is who I am. If you don't like me, I'm not for you. And that's fine. There might be a doc who is. And same thing for you. Like, if there's a comedian that you like that's not me, well, if you don't like me on Instagram, you're definitely not going to like me in person in stand up.
Yeah. I mean, you said it so perfectly. It's like expectations not being met. That's where a lot of pain comes from. So I think a big part of, and I've kind of said this to my audience, is I was kind of sprinkled in the comedy, but they never knew that was like the biggest desire and the biggest part of me. So what happened is making jokes and then somebody taking it the wrong way. And it's like, dude, it's comedy. That's literally the whole point. And so I think that ultra sensitivity is just ridiculous. And it's become to the point where anything could be offensive and messed up. And it's like, what happened to self-deprecation? What happened to laughing at ourselves? What happened to realizing that this whole experience is fun and it's supposed to be a joke? You're not supposed to take life that seriously. If you are, it's going to be such a more difficult experience. And so now that I'm kind of like owning it more, I haven't gotten anything. And I think that's because they notice that my energy is different. They notice that I'm like, hey, I'm here. This is me. And like, kind of not like an F off in a mean way, but like, this is my page. This is my home. This is my shit. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, see you later. And I think before I didn't really have that energy until recently. It feels like a new energy now, where 2 years ago, even I was a little bit more timid. So that's what I think it is too. It's like when you can tell that the energy of like JP gives two shits. Trust me. He lives like right there. Trust me. I'm with him a lot. Like he doesn't care because he is so who he is. And he believes in his mission and his why so big that it outweighs some random bro commenting something. So it's almost like I think the energy that you bring to the content and to what it is, if you show that you truly are super confident, they can't bite as hard because they know that like, wow, you're standing strong in who you are. But if you're like kind of tiptoeing, you're like, they're like, oh, let me get her. So that's what I think it's about. I think it's coming back to your truth. And I think a lot of people will still have respect, even if they don't agree with something, you know what I mean? So like what you were saying with you, it's like, there will be somebody who says, wow, he's intense. Maybe I don't agree with that, but I respect that he's being so him. So most people you'd hope would be rational and think that way, but I don't know.
Health makes people very uncomfortable, especially the past couple of years. But
but
I don't care. I mean, really, like I don't. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as you can tell, this is something I've thought about and brainstormed on and thought about so much because it's such an interesting concept. Yeah.
Well, you had the growth through pain too, which was kind of awesome. Like, a lot of us, we have this set point where we're too good to be great, or we like raise it up a little bit and then we stay in that comfort zone. And sometimes we do need somebody to throw a stone at us. And when you have these trolls that are online, it's like they don't know the type of person you are yet. They're throwing the rock as hard as they can, but are you made out of glass that's going to break as soon as you get hit with a stone, or are you made out of brick? And they throw the rock and boom, the brick comes back. Or if it's rubber, like I'm rubber, you are glue, it bounces back and hits them. Like, oh shit, this is impenetrable. There's no point for me to even try here. I'm going to go find the weakest link and try to find somebody else and go after them.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. That's a great analogy to what I was trying to articulate.
Yeah, I got you.
That's great.
But from like that standpoint as well, I mean, with the space that you're stepping into and embracing and owning the weird, you've got like, when we were growing up, like my graduating class, I think it was like 360 people or something in the graduating class. So like you only really had, yes, you had the other grades, but you had like 360, people's eyes on you at one time. And so if you were weird, you only got picked on by maybe 4 or 5 people. Like that was it. It was just, some jerk was like, hey, your name's Jacque Strap. Like, let's make fun of you. Let's hit you there. But now you have a ton of followers and your content gets pushed like in a good way. It gets shared everywhere. So you are so exposed right now, especially compared to what we kind of grew up with. So I admire your passion and really you stepping into this, because I know that, again, like, being a dude and hiding behind like the health side of things, like I need to step into that a little bit more. I need to stop being such a sissy about some stuff. And if I get yelled at, I'm just going to tag you and be like, Angie told me to say this.
Literally, I was going to say the greatest gift you can give yourself is to set yourself free. And I actually think from a brand perspective, short-term faking it to stay safe versus being yourself is way more sustainable as far as the longevity of a personal brand, because eventually people find out who you are. Eventually so in your thoughts and and so it's like, not that you have to like every day, like, eventually people kind of figure it out. So you might as well just start out with who you are, because like I said, the biggest pain will be if expectations aren't met. Right. That's where they'll be upset with you. So you might as well just like be you, and then people aren't going to be surprised. The problem with like JP or something like that is where, and with me in my situation, without going into detail, it's like, they thought I was someone different. They realized I thought differently. Maybe they're like, what? We thought that you thought, And so that's where it's like the expectations not being met. Yeah. So that's what I realized is the pain. So just be you now, so that nobody questions this point like, oh, I wonder how he thinks about this. It's like, they know.
Pretty on point. I have a pitch for you. So I've always thought about this. Okay. And your background, you were broadcast journalism. That what you said you were going to school with? Okay. So there's shit all over the internet, like negativity day in and day out. And I mean, this is probably like 6-7 years ago. I know I don't have the potential in me to be as funny as you are. I always thought like at the, whether it's like 12 o'clock, like noon or 1 o'clock-ish hour, that you should have, or somebody should have a happy hour. Not like alcoholic happy hour. It could, but like a happy hour that is like, it's an hour full of laughter, good stories, good times, good memory, like that type of thing. So like, I don't know if that's something that you would be interested in, to just take my idea and run with it. I don't care. But even if it's like 15 minutes of happy, and just, cause like people need that. We're thirsting for that. And there's very few places that we're able to find that now. And then we lose that in our lives. And so sometimes we need that outside, or that third party, be like, hey, it's okay to be weird. It's okay to be awesome. Like, it's okay to have fun in life and not take it so seriously. Yeah. I don't know. Just an idea for you.
No, I love that. I've thought of that called like happy news. And it's like that's kind of my vision with my content. I say I want it to be a respite, which is obviously just an escape from anything that's going on. So as much as I'm actually extremely passionate about a lot of things that are going on in the world, and it might be a little controversial, my thoughts, but at the same time, I know that like, I'm like, okay, I don't want my page to become political. So I usually make it a space where you can just come, laugh, and then go on with your day. I don't want to be seen as that, because then it creates that heavy energy. So it is interesting. You kind of have to assess what you're open to sharing and doing. But I think that, I think like this idea of happy news is kind of cool, because it's like, right now, that's not what's going on. Right now, there's so much drama, so much shit. There's just something every day to be stressed about or worried about, and to be freaking out about, according to the news. It's kind of hard to like just come back to your center and just like have a laugh, because honestly, that's the medicine. I'm a huge believer in like levity is the medicine and humor is the medicine. I think that comedy it's an art. It's one of my favorite things to do, because the thought of somebody commenting like, this made my day a little bit better, like that's it for me. That's the greatest gift. Like, people with depression will be like, I just watch your shit sometimes. I'm like, awesome. Like, I think that's the gift. I think that's all the best thing we can do for our health too. Especially right now, like people are just like really burnt out. I'm sure you know this. So I'm like, oh, number one secret to burnout. Yeah, we've got supplements and nutrition and all this, but even deeper than that, remembering your joy, remembering your childlike joy, just even for 5 minutes a day. Like, we need to get back to that somehow. So that's cool that you said that, because it kind of just reminded me like that's the mission. Like, I need to keep focused on. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. We kind of had that same thing in mind. Like I said, I don't have the skills to do that. Like my comedy, I've got dad jokes that might be funny to some people, but my wife Megan is like, you probably shouldn't do that one. I even cracked one up in Minnesota, and my buddy Kyle was like, was that a dad joke that you just did in the car? And I'm like, yeah, it was. And he goes, that was a pretty bad one. I'm like, well, aren't all dad jokes bad?
Like that's what makes it a dad joke. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an art and a gift that I've been hiding for a while. People always kind of knew, but like I'm really stepping into it now. Like, I love script writing. Like, after this, I'm gonna go script a reel. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. Take a concept, write the script, film it, like edit it. Like, I love that. But I noticed that's not like, most people don't want to do that. So I'm like, oh, I should expand on this more if that's like my favorite thing to do in my work. Like, the world needs this. And I feel like people are in almost like a motivation burnout, and a, like you said, toxicity and like heaviness burnout, and in a deficit of like joy and simplicity and play and like authenticity and all these things we talked about. So that's kind of what Own Your Weird is to me. It's like, I don't know if it'll become a book or what it'll be, but it's like this concept of like, we gotta like have fun again because it's just going to kill us if we don't. It's just too much.
Yeah. Have fun and go back to basics. And again, the trip that I did, like we were out in the middle of freaking nowhere. Like
Wow.
like the silence was deafening. We were outside, we had snow. There was like 3 feet of snow up there. And like, we would just walk these trails and we'd stop. And it was just like, you could hear your heart beating. It was almost like you could hear, feel your blood flowing. It was so unique. And in that, you're like, what the hell am I doing? Like on a daily basis, like I need to have more of these moments. I need to have more joy. I need to get back to the roots. We had chainsaws and axes. And we were like doing all the manly stuff, like at splinters at surface. Like, oh yeah, this chainsaw, that scared the shit out of me. Being 100% on. The guy was like giving the demonstration. He's like, okay, this is really easy. It's the best chainsaw you can get. You just do it like this. And he goes, but don't do like this or it'll go through your face. Don't do this. It'll go through your leg. Don't do here. You'll take your boot off. And I'm like, well, I was good until you told me the other stuff. So that was frightening. I overcame it. I stepped right into it. I was the first one to run the chainsaw, but being able to do that and having that childlike joy. And I've got 2 kids and I customized my day, which was me stepping into a lot of uncomfortableness. I chopped my hours down to only work 16 hours a week. 16 days a week. That's how it used to feel. Yeah. Very successful.
That's a lot. That's a hustle. That's hustle.
Yes. So we're working 16 hours a week. So that way I could play with my kids. And to me, like I'm able to step into that child zone where I don't have my phone. I don't have my watch on me that is like dinging me constantly because like I'm an empath. That's just like how I was created. So like I deal with a lot of really heavy stuff on a daily basis. So if I don't do that, then I have more stress. I have more anxiety. I lose more sleep. And it's like, it's not worth it. Even though it was uncomfortable to go from like 40 hours a week down to 16 and I don't work Fridays except to do like podcasts and stuff. Like it's an amazing feeling. And you have to get through the suck of it or get through like the anxiety of it. And on the other side, it's truly like, it's amazing to me.
That is amazing. That's like the dream. Right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole point of all this is to be with your kids. So it's like, if you can create that life, that is it. That's success. And so many people are trying to find it. And it's like time freedom and the ability to be with the people you want to be with.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise you surround yourself by shitty people and you're like miserable all the time.
Or just overworking. Most people I think are also in the, there's obviously you have to work hard, but then there's like, it's like the pendulum. Where does it go too far where that's all you do and all you think about? And that's not healthy either. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah. We had met with a guy this past week, again, same place. I keep talking about this place because I had such a good freaking time. But this guy was like, he was one of the most humble people in the world. And he talked about how he was a teacher. And then he took a year off because he's like, teaching wasn't my passion and I loved birds. So he was like, I wanted to go bird watching. And then he turned that into a business and was carving like chainsaw carving and like hand carving birds. And he was like, this is pretty good. Like maybe we should just do this. So he would sell like 7 a year. And he's like so nonchalant about it. He has stuff in the freaking Smithsonian. Like he's that good. And he's like, yeah, then I took another year off because I didn't really want to do that. And then I wanted to buy a house in Minnesota. So I did that. And like the whole time I'm like, wow, like you really got this thing down. Like you knew what you wanted and you weren't afraid to go after it. And then he brought something else up around the campfire. And he was like, nobody talks about the stress component. Nobody talks about the panic attacks, the anxiety, all of that. He goes, so make sure that whatever you're doing, it's bringing you joy. Otherwise, the more days that you spend robbing yourself of joy, and from I'm listening to him like, yes, I've been talking to these guys about this all weekend. But like from a physiological standpoint, like that chronic stress that people put themselves under, whether it's not being authentic or hiding behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, or they're just constantly guzzling, toxic news, and it's making us sicker and sicker. And then it's putting that fear in our mind. And then that inability to be able to be healthy in our mind, or we can't be healthy unless we fill in the blanks. Then it robs us of all of our power. And when you really dissect that, when we say rob you of your power, that means that we are sick. We are not at 100%. So there's been a lot of patients that I've worked with in the past 2 years, 3 years, even specifically last year was crazy. Like women, especially, they're like, I hate my freaking job. And I'm like, what are you going to do about it? And they're like, well, I'm going to quit. I'm like, well, okay, well, go for it. But like, make sure you talk to your husband first. Like, I don't want you to go to your husband and be like, hey, Dr. Jacque told me to quit my job. But they're like, I can't do this anymore. And she's like, the one was like, I want to learn a different language. And she did that. And her husband goes, well, I want to learn how to fly helicopters.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, cool. So like they were both able to, like, they were living inauthentic lives together. And then because they peeled the layer back and said, I'm not happy doing this. And the other was like, well, me neither. Let's do some fun stuff together. It really allows people to bring their relationships to the next level and then not have to feel like you have to work a 9 to 5 to be successful. Because the hustle and grind, I hate that. Like people are saying you got to wake up. We talked about that. Like wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you have to grind all morning to be successful. I'm like, you're killing yourself. Like that's not sustainable for a long period of time. Your circadian rhythms need that 10 to 6 sleep. If you don't get that, then you're sick. And I don't care if you're not sick right now, but give you a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then you're going to be dependent on some other sort of stimulant, whether it's caffeine or cocaine, to get you going. And then how long could you do that for? Your body hates you and you're going to eventually hate yourself and you're not going to be successful in the long run. So I always think long-term versus short-term. I don't know how you think about that, but that's how I do.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Again, I've always been this way. So I don't know. Maybe it's like stubbornness. I'm just like, man, we're just like floating around on a ball. We're just like these little cucumbers. This is going to be so short, this experience. I'm just like ruthless about doing what I like. And I don't do any shit I don't want to do. And I've always kind of been so committed to that. Like my friends would be like, Angie would never, she's chasing joy. She's so committed to her joy. So for me, it is like, what would I wake up and do every day if I could create this life? And I'm grateful that I've done that. It's come with sacrifice and hard work, but I think now we're living in a time where that's possible more than ever. People act like we're living in the worst time ever. We're actually living in one of the most privileged times ever, actually, with a lot of these opportunities and things that were a lot worse a few hundred years ago and were just horrible. So I think that like we're also in a time of, there's a lot of optionality and opportunity that there wasn't before. And I'm grateful for that. I try to focus on that when it comes to social media versus the drama of it. I'm like, wow, how cool is this that I have an app on my phone that's free, that's literally giving me the opportunity to connect with people and have a job. Like that's awesome. That's such a gift. Even podcasting, like this is free for them to listen to right now. That's such a gift. And so I focus on that. I put my health first. So by putting my health first, I've chosen to not have a job where I have to be out of the house 80 hours a week. And then I'll be away from my kids once I have kids. Like I've always wanted to create a life where I could be home with my kids. And so I think you have to first know your values and your priorities too. Like you said, working to live versus living to work.
Live to work.
So,
So you don't have kids yet?
No, not yet.
I'm excited for you to have kids.
I am. I'm very
not to
excited.
put like a time frame around it, but like they're going to be like little awesome people, and you're going to be able to allow them to be authentic expression. So I'm excited to see. Like, hopefully
soon, actually. So I don't know. I'm terrified, but yeah. But ready is a lie. Ready
Let
is
me
a
know
lie.
if you need help. I'm here for you.
I'm going to be a fun mom, but I don't know if I'm going to be a responsible mom. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm a fun dad, but I definitely crack the whip when I need to. So if you need any pointers, trust me, I have some.
I'm just going to Google shit and have figure it out. Get judged.
That's another, like you open yourself to so much judgment through pregnancy and how you're a parent.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think of that next season and I already know I'm just going to be even more self-deprecating of myself and my child. My child's going to already know what it's like to be made fun of. And Clay and I always talk about that. We're like, how healthy is it that our kid is probably going to be the funniest kid because it's going to know like, it just came from two parents that are like just weird and witty and self-deprecating. So they're going to grow up thinking like, it's normal. You make fun of yourself, right? When you fall, you make fun of yourself. And the other kids are gonna be like, no, and have all this trauma around it. So I almost think like from the get-go, I'm really committed to her or him knowing like, oh, we don't take this experience too seriously. And I think if I can teach them that, that's actually it's a pretty good gift, I guess. So
yeah. Well, I mean, trying to make like a beacon of light in a dark world is a great, whether it's through comedy or through just like self-deprivation, deprivation, not defecation, because you don't want them walking around pooping themselves. But
or they can.
Or that.
Like, they can
I mean,
live
it's
their
fine.
best
Be like a monkey just pooping, flinging across the room. There you go. But so I know we're going to have to wrap this up because I know we could talk like all day long and I've had a really good time, but I want to know, aside from business, okay, what has been your most memorable moment? What brought you the most joy out of anything in your life, business aside? Putting you on the spot.
Wow. No one's really asked me that question. Two things came to mind. One, I think my most joyful moments are still ahead of me because I'm not a parent yet.
That's such a safe answer. That's fine.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's also true, right? I don't mean that in a cheesy way, like, oh, a party that I'm going to go to. No, I mean it in like, I spent the last 11 years, I would say, kind of not like, I always had balance. I had seasons of hustle, but as a woman, I spent a lot of time just like career. And I'm finally ready to like not be obsessed with it that much. It's part of my life,
Yeah.
but this isn't my entire life. And so
Right.
my friendships and starting a family and other things. And I feel like I'm grateful that I put that work in my 20s. So I have the optionality to do that, where other women, they started having families. And then I'm like, am I behind? So everyone, no matter what situation you're in, you always think you're behind. So I think that my best moments are to come, because I don't think I've experienced actually really what my true purpose is. And I think that's going to be way deeper than even my career. And I think that's healthy to come to terms with. And
Mhm.
also, when I think of like up to date though, something that came to mind is my brother, who's the co-founder of Soul with me. He was an athlete and he's been in a lot of pain. He has a crazy cool story as a professional athlete. And I've seen my brother on 8 different medications and in so much pain in hospitals, and
Yeah.
something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is like,
Ankylosing spondylitis. Yeah.
yeah, you probably know about
harsh.
that.
Yep.
Autoimmune stuff. We think, insert childhood trauma, just random shit, and
Yeah.
that could cause pain, right? Insert all the Joe Dispenza quotes here.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what's even
Really?
pain?
Yeah.
So seeing my brother now healthy as he's ever been, and vibrant and on 0 medications, and like, that's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, is seeing Mike go through that. And he's my best friend and we've been really close throughout all this. And I don't know, I randomly thought of that. It's like, was such a cool day when he was like, I'm off this shit and I'm able to like get my life back. And I think anybody who's had a loved one who's in pain, it's like, it's next level when you see them free and out of pain.
With you saying that, and I really appreciate you sharing that. With
Yeah.
you saying that, do you ever look and like, if you're afraid to step out and do something, you're like, if my brother was able to do this, why the hell couldn't I do that? Have you ever used that as like a comparison to move you and drive you?
Yeah. I mean, Mike was a top 5 boxer in the world. I mean, I've seen my brother literally, he's such a sweet person. So it's funny to think that he punched people in the face, but it's a weird job. It's very dark. It's a weird industry. It's just not so messed up. But I've seen him, fight people while he was in so much physical pain. And so to see him still show up to something physically when he's mentally and physically was in pain, dealing with anxiety and depression and physical pain. And I'm over here feeling good. And I'm like, I'm not even having to have someone punch me in the face or vice versa. I can go do this thing. So it does put things into perspective of like how strong we are. And I don't think I've actually seen my true emotional and physical strength yet. And I think I should remind him of that. That's a good thing to remind yourself, because it's like, man, when you've seen someone at the lowest still showing up, it's like, when you have felt sick or anxious or depressed, and then people get out of that, they're like, wow, I'm never going to take another day for granted because I feel good now. So I do remind myself that, like, if I wake up and feel good, like, that's a gift. There's people out there who wake up and do not feel good. And so even just feeling energized and good is a gift. And so I do think of that a lot. Yeah.
And what would be like your advice if somebody was listening to this, was like, you know what, I've been uncomfortable long enough. Like, I think I need to step out. What advice would you have for them? What an encouragement to have them step out and do what they're truly called to do?
I'm like, ready as a lie. Own your weird. I think life is kind of like in summation of everything we chat about today, with realizing the beauty in that life is short. So it's almost like you might as well just do what you want, because we have more control than we think. I think a lot of times we think we have to follow a certain path or follow a certain set of rules, but in reality, we get to break some and make some. And I think that that's really healthy, especially if you are listening to this and you want to try to start your own business. I think you'll never regret trying. You'll never regret trying. I don't think the secret is becoming the best of the best, or having to, make $1 zillion or whatever the internet's telling you should have to be happy. I think growth is what makes you happy. I think trying new things is what makes humans happy. I think challenge is what makes humans happy. So a lot of times you're already in your worst case scenario. I always tell people, let's say you're at your 9-to-5 job that you hate. And I usually ask women this, because I get this DM every day. And I say, if you leave or you start this thing on the side and it doesn't work out for some reason after years, even though at that point you're probably going to pivot and figure it out anyway. But if it doesn't, let's go to the worst case. Would you be able to go back to the job that you're in right now to pay your bills? And they always say yes. And I'm like, congrats. You already are actually in the worst case scenario. You're experiencing it. You're in it. And they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, so it doesn't get does it get worse than this? This is it. So that's a good perspective shift for people who are afraid to try to take a chance or take the leap or take the first step. I think reminding yourself, like, you might already just be in what's already the worst case scenario. So I'm a huge fan of trying. At least try, at least show up,
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
And where can people reach out and find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at Angie Lee Show, angielee.com. The podcast is Angie Lee Show. So yeah, all things Angie Lee Show.
And then when are you coming to Phoenix to do comedy?
I know. I would love to go. I know. I'm like, it's actually a really good comedy circuit. So
Yeah.
I'm starting classes here just to like sharpen script writing even more. And then I'll probably
Yeah.
do some for fun, but I don't know. It would actually be cool to do like a tour or I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Well, if you did it, you better let me know so that way we can come and support you. And I'll gather as many people as I can to come out and support you.
I will.
So.
I have so many cool friends in Arizona now. I'm like,
Yeah.
whenever I go there, I'm like, man, I love the people there. There's some awesome people there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for jumping on the show with me today, being respectful of both of our times, but yours in particular. Again, I really appreciate this. And I'm so excited to get this content, this information out there because again, we're like, I can nudge people only so far, but you've stepped in, you've done this. This is right in your wheelhouse. So being able to kind of get an expert to go and speak on this really helps to drive the point home that I kind of got people's feet wet and you're just like, go in the water. Like you're done. That's it.
Go in the
like,
water.
Figure out how to swim. So awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.